Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm Maria Horsager.
And I'm Micah Horsager.
And today we get to interview our dad on his new book, Trusted Leader. Welcome to your own podcast, Dad.
It's great to be here. Thanks, team.
So, Dad, why this book about trust now?
Well, I'll tell you, we kept finding in the research, and we've been doing a couple decades almost of this research around trust, and we keep finding that a lack of trust is still the biggest expense of leaders and organizations. In fact, we've been finding last few years the number one reason people want to work for an organization, ahead of being paid more, ahead of having a more fun work environment, is trusted leadership. We found that people either want to be leaders they trust, trusted leaders, or they want to follow leaders they can trust over everything else. So we also saw people think, they wanted to, they believe that either trust is something you have or you don't. And the truth is, trust is something you can build every single day. So that's a part of it. Beyond that, I'm passionate about this work because, it even changed me.
You say trust is always the leading indicator. What do you mean by that?
Well, in business, we talk about lagging indicators like important things, sales, attrition, retention, but those lag to something you did. You get sales because of phone calls, or you get strong leadership because of vision. That's a leading indicator, and the real leading indicator is always trust. Most people we found are not solving the root issue because trust is always a root issue. So you never have an engagement issue. It's always a trust issue. You don't have a net promoter score issue. The research shows the only way to increase referrals is increase trust. In fact, what we found is you don't have a leadership issue. The only reason I follow a leader or not is trust, unless it's a dictator. Even with sales, the only reason I buy something or not is trust, unless it's a commodity. The only way to amplify a marketing message is increase trust in that message. The only way to have more learning in your classroom, like the classroom you go to every day, the only way to increase learning is increase trust either in the teacher, the classroom, the psychological safety, or the content. You have to deal with the trust issue. In fact, even in the innovation issues of our day, the only way to increase innovation in a team is increase trust in the team so that people are willing to share ideas. And maybe even more importantly, what we kept finding is the diversity issues of our day that we all care about. Diversity on its own, the biggest Harvard Putnam study shows diversity on its own pits people against each other unless you increase trust. The only way to get the benefits of diversity, inclusion, equity, you have to increase trust. So trust is always the leading indicator. When people deal with that, they actually deal with the real issue.
So, I noticed that there's two parts to this book. So tell us about that.
I will do that. I'll tell you what. So this book is special compared to The Trust Edge. And of course, I was passionate about The Trust Edge that I wrote over a decade ago. But the first half of the book shifts thinking about trust. It's a parable. It's a business leadership parable that is inspiring and fun. It's set in the mountains where I love to ski and I love the mountains, but it's also it's quick, easy to read, and it just shifts thinking about trust. What we found is, people don't have a full understanding of trust. Even when I did the grad work, I thought I kind of knew it all about trust. And what we see is, it not only matters more than ever, not only is it always the root issue, but it might be a little bigger or different than we think. So, for instance, we can think transparency is trusted. A lot of people today say, kind of the business word of the decade, transparency, vulnerability, that's what's trusted. And that can be important, but the truth is, even some of your friends are so transparent on Instagram, I don't trust them. Because in leadership, confidentiality is also trusted. So we have to be as transparent as we can while being as confidential as we ought. We also know that, confidence can be trusted, but if that leads to arrogance, it's not trusted. Or we can think it takes a long time to build trust. That can be true, but if that, in a moment of crisis, complete strangers trust each other like that. So trust is more complex than we might think, and yet it's always the root issue and core cause. So that's that first half, just shifting thinking. Second half of the book, we get into application. And you know me, I grew up on a farm, where Grandma and Grandpa live. And I need to be able to use it. I didn't want to just be that professor when I was, studying, doing research. I wanted to be someone who could use it. So that second half of the book is full of actionable tips that you can use, a leader can use, a parent can use tomorrow morning to increase trust. And that's all those tools. Many of them were learned after this over a decade of work on 6 continents. So it's all these new tools I can use tomorrow morning, the how plan, the SPA method, the trust shield. Those actionable tools are in that second half so people can use it. And that 8-pillar framework, it was really fun for the Institute here. They were just revalidated by an outside university as the way trust is built globally, that framework. So under that framework, we have all these actionable tools people can use. I'm really excited about the impact of those.
You've been talking about this trust stuff since before I was born. When did you originally start thinking about this?
Well, there's probably 2 answers to that question. In one way, it started, Lisa and I, your mom and I were, I'd built this little leadership curriculum and some of the stuff when I was directing this youth and family organization, well over 2 decades ago. And, but I started getting asked to speak on it stuff and I started thinking, this issue they're talking about today, I remember we were in Arizona. It was just kind of this epiphany. And I was just like, that issue today, that's not the real issue. It's actually a trust issue. And then I started thinking, that sales issue that I was doing, that's not a sales issue. It's a trust issue. And I started to see intuitively, trust was the core issue. That led to my grad work, and that fueled my passion. And then that led to, because we kept seeing this, we started using it in companies that actually worked. This one company, right away, we did something that drove attrition down by millions of dollars. And then we had someone say it tripled their sales. And then we had someone say it helped them save their marriage. So I started to, that fueled my passion. And then the books and whatever. But probably the biggest reason I'm passionate about this is it changed me along the way. I hope it changed how I parent, changed how I lead this organization. It keeps changing me. And you guys know I'm not perfect at any of this stuff, but I know it's true from the research. So it keeps changing me. And actually, one more level of inspiration when I think about it. Growing up on that farm under your grandma and grandpa, I had great leadership. You can learn things from toxic, terrible leadership, and you can learn things from great leadership. And it's kind of like, as I say, it's not my fault I had a good mom and dad, but I learned a lot. By growing up under them, I saw so many people wanted to work for them on that farm, and how dad treated people when they worked on the farm, how mom welcomed people, and so your grandparents were a big part of this inspiration too.
So, can you give us a few more examples?
Well, specific examples. You're cheap. You don't want to buy the book, Micah, or what? I'll tell you what. Let me think of a couple. So one example, that's really quick to share in a podcast would be, how do you rebuild trust? A lot of people talk about, how do I rebuild trust once I've lost it? We've all made mistakes. How do we rebuild it? Well, I'll tell you first off what it's not. It's not the apology. Now, I'm not saying don't apologize when you make a mistake. We all make mistakes and we need to apologize. But I still remember this experience. CEO from the Netherlands came to America. He'd been here a couple weeks. I said, hey, what's the first thing you notice in America? He said, you want to know the truth, David? In America, you've got a bunch of lying apologizers. They all say they're sorry and they don't mean it. I said, what do you mean? He said, I got this guy, he comes every day. I'm sorry I'm late. No, you're not. You're late every single day. So we don't trust people just because they say, I'm sorry. We trust people when they make and keep a new commitment, right? And so this is kind of like, you've heard the idea, love your neighbors yourself. Yeah? Well, if you get around people that actually don't love themselves at all, they have a hard time loving other people. It's the same with trust. People that don't make and keep their own commitments, they have a hard time building trust with others. So the lesson for all of us is when we make commitments, keep it, because then we trust ourselves more and we have a easier time rebuilding it with others.
I'm curious about what you really want readers to take away from this book.
Well, overall, I guess I want them to shift thinking about trust. I want them to see that trust is the real core issue. It's the root cause. Everything we do at a Trust Edge Leadership Institute, from using the big enterprise trust index on big companies all the way down to self-assessments and 360s, Trust Edge measurement tools, all the way to our coaching and consulting practice, it's all about helping people see the root issue, because when they solve that and then giving them tools they can use to actually change things. So I think the two sides are just like the book. It's like They've got to shift thinking about trust, how big it is, how it matters more than ever, whether it's a global government or a corruption issue like we're dealing with in East Africa or other parts of the world, or an individual. They have to see the impact of trust. It's always a root issue. It's never a communication issue, an engagement issue, or whatever. And I want them to take away these tools they can use tomorrow morning. We've used those. Those have changed me. They've changed organizations that we've worked with. So I want them to see that. And I want to see how, like everything, it starts with an individual. Organizations, it turns out, don't change. Only individuals do. But when an individual does, then a team, a company, even a country can change. And but until one police officer stops, accepting a bribe, then you're not going to have a chance at really ending bribery probably in a country. And it's the same with us. We've got to. This starts with each of us. So
That's cool.
Well, let me ask you guys a couple questions. So first of all, Maria, what have you noticed when you see people build trust at school? I mean, that's a tough world, middle school, right? But what is it about people? Is there anything common to people that build trust that you like? I trust those people.
I've noticed that in school, when people open up more, I tend to trust them more.
Okay. Yeah. Open up. And that's interesting because we saw in last year's study, 92% of leaders trust their senior leader more if they're more transparent about their mistakes. I bet you don't connect with them more just because they open up about how cool they are and how many awards they've won and the homecoming queen. That you right? You trust them more when they're open about who they are, their mistakes, even their challenges. And that's true. I know one other that you talked about earlier today was about people that include others, and you are an amazing includer. You love to welcome people and encourage people, and your smile is so magnetic. But that comes under the connection pillar. That's one of the 8 pillars of trust, this willingness to include. Boy, we could use more of that in our world today, this including people and connecting people and being healthily transparent. So let's go to you, Micah. Who is a leader that you trust? Who's someone you trust?
Well, I really trust my brother Isaiah because he definitely is very willing to help me with whatever I might need help with, and he's also really smart.
That's very cool. And I didn't put you up to that. I'm grateful that you guys all love each other, all 4 of you, and trust each other. But it's true. Isaiah's not just smart. He helps all of us with our homework, doesn't he? I don't know what I'd do if I had to help you guys with your math. That's beyond me. So, hey, this has been a special treat. Thank you for being great hosts. I'm going to let you wrap it up. But before I do, on my guest on my own show, hey, today's launch day, Trusted Leader book. Even if you don't want to buy a book, you can go to trustedleaderbook.com, and there's a free, really beautifully produced webcast in conjunction with Kaleidoscope and our producers, and also our publisher, Barrett Kohler. So we're so grateful for them. You can go to trustedleaderbook.com. You can get access to that this week only. You can get access to that webcast. It's kind of a masterclass on trusted leadership where we share a whole lot more and tips and takeaways you can use tomorrow morning. If you'd like a book, or if you'd like a book for your books for your companies, we can help you with that bulk and get discussion guides and a host of other assets so you can make this meaningful work and try to help people think differently about trust and actually take action on it so they build trust more every day.
Thank you for joining us on the Trusted Leader Show. Bye.
Bye.